Welcome to Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
All right, elephant in the room. Here's the whole story. UVA AD Carla Williams quietly signed a 5-year contract extension last month. Chris Graham here, Augusta Free Press. All right, we knew it was coming, maybe. I'm about to reveal the story behind the best kept secret at the University of Virginia that Carla Williams signed that 5-year contract extension last month. I'm recording this now on January 19th. I wrote on January 16th after getting my answer from a Freedom of Information Act request, which got me a copy of the new deal, which showed that Williams, who was hired as the athletics director at UVA in 2017, signed on December 18th, so a month ago, a contract that will run through May 31st, 2030, and will pay her $1.4 million annually with an annual performance bonus of $300,000 also possible. And it's based on, quote, meeting our mutually agreed upon goals. That's what the language in the contract says. So don't know what those goals are. Let's presume they're easy to meet. That's just the way these things work. All right. So in addition to that, Williams would stand to get a 3.5% bonus relative to her base salary and licensing payments. Each year, the UVA football program would play in a bowl game, and another 3.5% bonus is possible relative to her base salary and licensing payments again for a top 10 Directors Cup finish. Now, that 3.5% figure works out to about $40,000. So it's, if they hit both of those goals, which seem reasonable, your football team wins 6 games, your squash team and other non-revenue sports do well like they do every year. You get in the top 10 of the Directors Cup, you get 80,000 more. It's not going to make you, but be able to buy a foreign island or anything like that, but it's money. And it's also incentive. I mean, these incentives weren't in her previous contract, the one she signed in 2021. So maybe this is what it takes to get UVA football into a bowl. Now Carla Williams has got a $40,000 check waiting for it. This new contract represents a $300,000 plus increase in total annual compensation from the 4-year contract she signed back in 2021. That one paid her $1.09 million per year, with an annual performance bonus set at $250,000. Again, there were no additional bonuses in that contract for bowl games or Directors Cup finishes. You'll probably want to know what happens in the event that she is terminated, quote unquote, without cause. That's without any finding of negligence or legal malfeasance, just because we don't like your job performance. That's without cause. UVA owes her the rest of the money on the deal. So that's a pretty good deal. That's a better deal than any of us have when we get fired from our jobs, right? What's going on here is Williams' contract status has been subject to speculation mainly because of me. I'm not touting myself, tooting my own horn. It's just this the fact. In the course of trying to get a complete picture of the status of the top employees of UVA athletics last year, I filed several FOIA requests. This is in the course of me writing about Tony Bennett's contract situation. Okay, so as I'm doing that, I start thinking I need to look up Tony Elliott, the football coach, Brian O'Connor, the baseball coach. I start, digging into what the assistants make for those staffs. I did some individual programs. I mean, there's a lot of back and forth with me in the FOIA office. I should have them on my Christmas card list. So in the process for doing all that, I filed a FOIA request for a copy of Williams' contract and any offers on the table for an extension because it had been rumored at that time. And then confirmed that the Board of Visitors had voted in June last year to approve a 5-year extension for her, re-electing her, in effect, I think was the wording in the resolution. So I was looking to see if a new contract was already in place. I did this last July, or if work was being done in the course of that, because her contract, when I got it back, revealed that her existing contract at that time was due to come up for termination on May 31st, 2025. So, a few months away relatively, right? The 2021 deal, when I read through the particulars of the contract language, included a deadline for Williams to meet with UVA President Jim Ryan, quote, for the purpose of discussing renewal or non-renewal of this agreement at a date no later than 6 months before the expiration of this term, which would translate to November 30th. Thinking back to what day that would have been, that was the day of the Virginia Tech football game, the season-ending game in the UVA football season. So that's a couple months ago, but still that's 6 months away from May 31st. Okay. So I did that first FOIA request I said back in the summer, back in July. I checked in on the contract situation with UVA Athletics in November and again in December. They forwarded me to the FOIA office. I got responses back on November 4th, December 3rd. The responses were just a copy of her still at that point current contract from 2021. So there was no clarity coming from there. I started reaching out to members of the UVA Board of Visitors to find out what was being talked about at the top level there. Obviously, the Board of Visitors runs the University of Virginia through its president, Jim Ryan. The sense I got from those conversations was that there was a major disconnect between the Board of Visitors and Williams, actually, even more so between the Board of Visitors and Ryan. We'll get more into that here in a few minutes. But one board member had told me that things had gotten to the point behind the scenes that Williams had begun interviewing for other jobs last fall. No one within UVA Athletics pushed back on me when I reported on those comments from higher ups. And it's interesting then and notable that on December 18th and for the month after, UVA Athletics did not make any kind of announcement to the public. And I learned last night, even employees in the athletics department were apparently kept in the dark about the contract extension. It was a surprise that one higher up within UVA Athletics told Augusta Free Press that the way the employees learned that Williams had signed that contract was reading Augusta Free Press. That's interesting. Okay. You'd think that there'd be a PR benefit to this, getting that information out there, particularly with the big items that are out there. Hiring a basketball coach is one example, but they didn't. So now more background on what may be going on. I'm wondering how this contract situation fits into the ongoing political power struggle between Ryan and the Board of Visitors. I mentioned there's something much bigger going on there. Now, the Board of Visitors has a supermajority of members that were appointed by Glenn Youngkin, the Republican. 13 of the 17 members of the Board of Visitors are Republicans appointed by Youngkin. This is significant because Ryan was first hired as the UVA president by a Board of Visitors that was majority Democrat back in 2018. And his contract was extended in 2022 by another Democrat majority Board of Visitors. Now, that one came at an interesting time politically. 2022, you got to think, Glenn Youngkin was elected governor in 2021, November of 2021, but he wouldn't be able to make his first appointments to the Board of Visitors until the end of June 2022. So 2 months after Youngkin was sworn in as governor, but 3 months before he could make his first board appointments, the outgoing majority Democrat Board of Visitors voted to give Ryan, who already at that point was under contract through 2025, an additional 3-year extension through 2028. There's politics going on there. So the Youngkin appointees, as they've begun to get, as they first started cycling onto the board, got majority power, now have supermajority power, they have been very public in their pushback against Ryan. With one, Bert Ellis, a double who made a few $1 billion in broadcasting, pledging to, quote, wage a battle royale for the soul of UVA. And the Youngkin group has raised issue with everything from what they've termed the university's woke diversity efforts to nitpicking the policies of the university guides. I've written about this extensively. A more tangible and more pressing issue that has been raised to me in private conversations with UVA leaders is the letter of no confidence from 128 UVA Physicians Group employed faculty that was signed back in September of last year, demanding the removal of UVA Health CEO Dr. Craig Kent and UVA School of Medicine Dean Dr. Melina Kibbe. One BOV member has expressed to me that Ryan's kid glove handling of that UVA Health situation has raised the stakes in the pitched battle between the BOV and the administration. With the status of UVA Health, a $2.5 billion a year business, billion with a B, being much more substantial in terms of being a cudgel than the complaints about wokeness. So you go from, we don't like you politically, to, uh-oh, there's something big going on here with our cash cow. Now, I'm just speculating, but I will wonder aloud here if the decision on Williams' status made by Ryan, who held the final say on that, it was up to him to not only, execute the contract, but, make the terms available. to her, giving her a big raise, 28.9% raise. I just wonder if that was influenced at all by the ongoing back and forth between the president and his bosses. Basically, was this some sort of power play by Jim Ryan? That might be overstating it, but I think it's worth talking about. So where we are going forward, Williams is no longer a lame duck AD as of December 18th. I've been writing for months about how UVA athletics needed to solve that problem first. Before you can hire a new basketball coach, you need to have an AD in place. Okay. So weird that UVA athletics wanted to keep that under wraps, but there she is. She's no longer a lame duck. She wasn't, but now we know that she's no longer a lame duck. Her first task now will be hiring a new head coach for men's basketball. Now, back in October, Carla Williams had signaled at the retirement press conference for Tony Bennett, October 18th at JPJ, that there would be a national search for that. And to that end, a committee of former players and coaches has been actively working on identifying and vetting candidates. I've been reporting on that a lot the last few weeks, and I reported earlier this week that that group of major players had narrowed that list for the time being at least down to 3 people: Marquette coach Shaka Smart, VCU coach Ryan Odom, and Furman coach Bob Ritchie. Now, take this for what it's worth, but one member of the committee was seen in attendance at VCU's home game this week with St. Louis. I've got that on very good authority. Now, was that a scouting trip or just an evening taking in a game featuring 2 of the top teams in the A10? Leave that for us to all think about. One would expect that the current interim head coach who took over in Bennett's stead, Ron Sanchez, a longtime Bennett assistant, would also be in the running, but the team is 8-10. It's taken a major step back since the win earlier this season over Villanova, which is now an NCAA tournament contender. Virginia is very much not. But let's leave Sanchez in the mix there as well, just for posterity's sake. Williams' AD obviously has the final say on the new coach, and if she was the impetus behind putting together the committee, which I think is the case, that's a pretty wise move. Let's get some smart people, and I know the identities of a lot of the people on this group. It's a group that you would want leading the search for your new coach. Now, the other biggie on her agenda going forward then is the football program, obviously, which is very much in flux with Williams' 2021 hire, Tony Elliott, 11-23 through 3 seasons. His 2024 team was 5-7. Williams gave Elliott a 6-year contract, fully guaranteed when he signed in December 2021, keeps him at UVA through 2027. He's got 3 more seasons left on that deal. And there's the added pressure there with football of the substantial investments of money into the program through donations for boosting the NIL budget for UVA football. We're talking about, tens of millions of dollars have been invested, committed over the next few years to UVA NIL, UVA football NIL. So it would seem to stand to reason that Elliott will enter the 2025 cycle in the hot seat. Let's just say it for what it is. He's got to show progress. 3-7, 3-9, 5-7. They got at least, I assume the program's got to at least get into a cold weather bowl game. That's 6 wins. That's progress, right? What Williams will do if the program fails to get to that level is going to be a focal point for the critics. Her record's much stronger in non-revenue sports. Women's swimming has won 4 straight national titles. Baseball has been to back-to-back College World Series. Teams up and down the menu bar there on the virginiasports.com website compete annually for ACC titles. I mean, it's just, UVA athletics, the ones that don't make money are really good. But they were called non-revenue sports for a reason. The operating surpluses that pay the bills for those programs come largely from football, a little bit from basketball, men's basketball. The more than half empty stadiums on Saturdays in the fall are something there that make it harder to pay those bills, right? And with basketball at 8-10 now, and more empty seats picking up. My wife, I'm recording this on Sunday. Virginia plays Boston College at home on Tuesday night. My wife bought 2 tickets to the game off StubHub for 90 cents each. Even with the fees, it was like $8. Those tickets aren't in demand like they used to be. So Carla Williams has her extension. Let's just see what she does with another 5 years. And to that end, let's get into the reaction. Because that's the story, and since I've written the story, our Facebook page is blown up, and that's not just page. The message boards, which I don't look at, but I scan for headlines to the last couple of days. Social media in general. I mean, this is not trending in a good direction. The reactions to the news, fans and alums are in meltdown mode. I don't think I'm overstating it to say that. Over the raise is the first thing. The blowback at the highest levels is on Ryan. Let's just say that. I got an email from a Board of Visitors member on Friday. The Board of Visitors Executive Committee approved an extension of her contract last June before football and now basketball completely fell off the cliff, but none of us were privy to the actual financials of the deal. My phone is blowing up. And that's an indication that, so I looked up the Board of Visitors Executive Committee. So I mentioned 13 of the 17 members of the board overall are Youngkin employees, but that executive committee is actually just a 4-3 Youngkin majority. But that committee was the one that was responsible for recommending Williams for a extension. But then, as was said here, I mean, the board did not have any details as to what Ryan was going to propose. So that was all the president's call. And it doesn't seem like that was a popular call with the people that he answers to. Also, with the folks in the athletics department, I mentioned that they didn't know until they read our story that this was happening, that this had happened, I should say. And they certainly didn't know about that huge raise. And it's not sitting well with a lot of folks there, I'm told, because of cuts around the margins for a lot of the programs over there. Travel budgets are being cut, have been cut. I mean, this is even impacting men's basketball, from what I've been told. So the case for Williams, I'll give here. I'm gonna give a case for Williams, and then I'll present the case of the critics. Here's the case for Williams. I think it's only fair because all we're seeing on social media, the comments everywhere is horrible hire, horrible extension, whatever. I'm getting, of course, the typical politically tinged bad DEI hire. Carla is a woman and she's black. Jim Ryan is a liberal Democrat. I mean, all these things. Okay, so here's the case for Carla Williams. The people who do think that this was a smart move point to her success, and I know this because we've chatted with some of these people. They don't want to be public, but they're there. They point to her success in raising money for infrastructure improvements. Basically, she builds things. She has on her watch at UVA finished an $80 million project to build a new football ops center, the $19 million expansion at Disher Park for UVA baseball, the $19 million Palmer Park for UVA softball, and then the $75 million Olympic Sports Complex is on schedule to open this summer. So, I mean, these are all huge things. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in fundraising for infrastructure improvements. She's also, whether it's been her doing it personally, which I kind of doubt, but she's been the leader of the department that has been able to get huge checks from the donors. I mentioned this earlier. The huge checks for NIL budgets, especially for football. One commitment from an anonymous donor to the football program, I'm told it is worth $10 million a year over the next 10 years. I don't think there's any coincidence that Tony Elliott has landed what's now being considered a top 25 transfer portal recruiting class. A lot of real good players in that transfer portal recruiting class. Those guys cost money. So just from a bottom line perspective, it will be hard to make the case in a business world that a CEO who has overseen hundreds of millions of dollars in successful building projects and has been able to build steady streams of revenue dedicated to boosting the acquisition and retention of talent shouldn't be retained herself and with an increase in compensation. That's the case for Carla Williams. All right, here's the case against. The behind the scenes stuff is obviously significant, but the front door to the athletics department is success on the field. Fair or not, the AD is judged on the success of the two programs that make money, football and men's basketball. Football's trending down. I mentioned, 11-23. For Tony Elliott, this is the guy that Carla Williams put in place after she pushed Bronco Mendenhall, who 2 years previous had gotten UVA football into its first ever Orange Bowl. She pushed him out in December of 2021. She replaces him with Tony Elliott, and things aren't going well. For whatever reason, Tony Elliott decided he was handed the keys to a program that was winning consistently. He decided to tear it down and start over. That's his prerogative. He was hired. I assume Carla Williams would have asked him what he was planning to do in the interview the interview process, hopefully lengthy interview process. She owns it too. And if she didn't ask that question, she owns it anyway. Either way, football is 11-23 over the last 3 seasons, not that long after being in an Orange Bowl because of Carla Williams and Tony Elliott. That's, fair or not. That's just the way it is. Men's basketball is going through a rough patch. This has nothing to do with Carla Williams. I mean, Tony Bennett said at his retirement press conference that she had essentially for the last 3 years had been talking him out of retiring. So she did everything she could to keep Tony Bennett happy, and it just didn't work out. But the point I'm making there is it's not 2019 anymore. 2019, from a sports perspective, might be the best year I'll ever have, and a lot of us will ever have. National title in basketball in April. Football beats Virginia Tech for the first time in a million years. Goes to the ACC championship game for the first time ever. First ever Orange Bowl. That's only 5+ years ago. I mean, that Orange Bowl was 5 years and a month ago. And even though men's basketball is not where it needs to be, that's Williams' first responsibility is to take care of men's basketball, get a new coach in place. The problem there is that her track record in hiring is mixed. I didn't write this in my story, but I was thinking all along her first hire at women's basketball, which is the sport she played in college, Tina Thompson, spectacularly flamed out. Her second one, Amaka Agugwa Hamilton, Coach Mox, doing better. As I'm recording this, actually, the UVA women's basketball team was in a tight battle with NC State on the road after the last 2 weeks getting road wins down at Clemson, at Virginia Tech, two top 60 net teams. So after a rough start this season, women's basketball is doing better. But I mentioned the Mendenhall Elliott situation. At the half-empty stadiums on Saturdays, the increasing number of empty seats in JPJ. Again, that's not her fault, but it's a fact of life. It's going to make it hard. Get this men's basketball coach situation right. But honestly, it'll be tough if 2025 doesn't go well for Tony Elliott. See what happens there. But in the meantime, she is getting things built.